All right, so I didn't just pick any dad. I picked a poke dad, not the father of poke, the Hawaiian fish. I picked the Pokemon dad, Satoshi Tajiri. I read an interview with Satoshi from Time Magazine. You have to go through a Wayback Machine, way back to 1999. And he was being interviewed about his games on the Game Boy Color. Spencer, can you do a Wayback soundbite? That was sound? Okay. Thank you. Satoshi frequently shuns the limelight. He's a very private person. They start the interview with the question, "Are you okay? You look pretty tired." And he says, "It's the way I work. I sleep 12 hours and then work 24 hours." And he's worked these irregular hours for the past 3 years. He states it's better to stay up day and night to come up with ideas. Now, I understand that with the video game industry and developers, they tend frequently to, have these kind of like late shifts, but that's one of the most extreme I've heard. So I guess he's just a fan of his projects and he's willing to do whatever it takes. A little bit of backstory on Satoshi. I think we all know him as the bug catcher, but there are other interesting things about him. He says, "I'm part of the first generation who grew up with manga and anime, after Godzilla. I was absorbed with Ultraman on TV and in manga. The profession of game designer was created really recently. If it didn't exist, I'd probably be making anime. I was really into Space Invaders in about 1978. It got me more and more interested in video games. There wasn't any media to get information about games, so I came up with Game Freak magazine." Now, we know Game Freak for being the company behind Pokemon and also Pulseman. Do you guys know a lot about Game
Timbo, the
Freak?
badass elephant.
That too. Do you guys know a lot about Game Freak magazine?
Not at all.
So he made it with his friend and just they actually got picked up for some copies.
It's a little,
Very, very light.
little power up knowledge there. He has a quote, "We sold, with his best issue, we sold 10,000 copies. It cost 300 yen each. I was 18. I already had a business going. At first, I used a photocopy machine. More important than style was the information, but when the sales increased, it was difficult to do by hand, so I took it to a printer." That was the big machine. But still really impressive of a resume for, in his young age. We're getting into the bug collecting. The place where I grew up in Machida, a western Tokyo suburb, was still rural back then. There were rice paddies, rivers, forests. It's interesting to think about because, I think we think Tokyo, we think like the city. I guess you think like New York City, you think the same way. But he says back in those days, it was more nature driven. And this is like coming from a 1999 perspective. Then development started taking place, and as it grew, all the insects were driven away. I was really interested in collecting insects. Every time I found a new insect, it was mysterious to me. And the more I searched for insects, the more I found. As I gathered more and more, I'd learn about them, like how some would feed on one another. So he talks about some of his strategies for collecting bugs. They range from, he talks about the common Japanese bug catcher style, which was like to put honey on a piece of bark and then a beetle would come to it and kids would collect beetles. I mean, this is all kind of weird to me. I'm not a bug guy. But he says, other kids didn't do what I did. If I put my hand in the river, I get a crayfish. If there was a stick over the hole, I would create an air bubble and I'd find insects there. I usually took them home. He says, I liked coming up with new ideas. I'd put a stone under a tree because they slept during the day and they like sleeping under stones, the beetles. So in the morning, I pick up the stone and find them. Yeah, I don't know, kind of an interesting hobby that he's got going on. And I think what we all kind of know and appreciate as some of the inspiration for the collection aspects and all the different creatures that you see in Pokemon. But it's not the only thing. He says everything I did as a kid is kind of rolled into one. That's what Pokemon is. Playing video games, watching TV, Ultraman with his capsule monsters, they all became ingredients for the game, and then I'd add deforestation there as well. Time asks, how did you get hooked up with Nintendo? Tajiri, I saw Game Boy when it was first released. The idea for Pokemon clicked in my mind. The basic idea for Pokemon seemed a good fit for Game Boy. at the time, Nintendo was not really that into the idea. He says they didn't really understand it, but then it ended up being like a bang up, game success. We all know like the first one just blew up. And he says he felt like a baseball hitter, like, who's like sliding the second base, after making like a big hit. So like, and he just didn't expect it. Let's talk about Pikachu. When they did the anime, they wanted a specific character to focus on. Pikachu is relatively popular compared with the others, and potentially both boys and girls would like it. Although he says in Japan, with the games, they weren't modeled off the anime, so you didn't necessarily start with Pikachu, although a lot of Japanese players would go after Pikachu. In America, we have like the yellow, and the kids would really like, starting with Pikachu in the party. And he says that he thinks American audiences actually appreciate Pokemon more, at least at that time, and that they are playing it the right way, or the way it was like meant to be played. So that was an interesting perspective. He does say that making Pikachu the mascot was not his idea, though. Monster taming. What's more important is that the monsters are controllable by the players. It could be the monster within yourself, representing fear or anger, for example. So I think we all have like our customized parties. We all have like different starters. We've gotten into that debate before. But he mentions that it's kind of like an element of personalization and choice. They're put in capsules, kind of like going back to Ultraman. Everybody can give the Pokemon their own names. Pikachu's like the name of the species, but each player can name their own Pikachu, so kids can relate to it more. They get more attached to them that way. They also have meaning, like Nyarth, which is Meowth. It's from a Japanese proverb about a cat with money on his head that doesn't know it's there. It's about understanding the value of money. I don't think they have that concept in the US, so the name is different. And then you have more literal ones like Pikachu. Pika is the sound Japanese. Say an electric spark makes, pika. And then chew is the sound the mouse makes, chew. So, I guess choo-choo rocket. Pikachu is like an electric mouse. Rivalry. In the game, the name of the protagonist is Satoshi. Do you know the name of the rival?
Miyamoto. Or Shigeru.
Shigeru. So the main rival in the game is Shigeru. Why is that? Well, he says he really looks up to Miyamoto-san. In the TV series, Shigeru is Satoshi's master, and in the game, they're rivals. He's always a little bit ahead of Satoshi. Since I was a teenager playing Donkey Kong, he's always been my role model. He's a mentor for my heart. And so throughout the years, he's always kind of had that perspective of like respect for Miyamoto. And they ask him frequently throughout the interview, well, you've caught up to him, haven't you? Your games sell way better than he does. He's like, no. Like, if that's the case, it's because I'm a byproduct of Miyamoto. So a very humble perspective, and it's nice to see that. A quote here about RPGs. And this is from Time. It seems like role-playing games are more popular
for pappies, for all the pappies out there.
All the papas out there. In Japan than the U.S. Why is that? Tajiri. Well, one reason is that back when we had arcade games only, they cost 100 yen for one game. I think in the US, it was always much cheaper at 25 cents. So, 20 years ago, we thought it was very expensive, but when role-playing games were introduced in Japan, it was revolutionary because once you bought the software, no matter how many times you played, it was free. I think that's kind of like a catch-all for just console games in general, but still an interesting perspective on kind of like the blow-up success of Pokemon. Doesn't necessarily apply, though, for American audiences because it like really blew up for us, too. So, he's speculating here. Fainting. In the game, the monsters faint. They don't die. Tajiri says, I was really careful in making monsters faint rather than die. I think that young people playing games have an abnormal concept about dying. They start to lose and say, I'm dying. It's not right for kids to think about a concept of death that way. They need to treat death with more respect. Here's a funny quote from Time. Well, there's a preacher in the U.S. who says Pikachu is the devil. Tajiri, I never heard of that. I heard there was a guy who criticized Harry Potter because of the magic, but I saw the author and she seemed really nice until she got on Twitter. The critic seemed like a grouchy a joke. So those are the main points from the interview. I think as far as legacy goes, it's nice to see that he's remained humble throughout the years. Obviously, this doesn't cover the changes in Pokemon throughout the years and how he feels about that. But it's nice to see how he feels about one of the most commercial successful entries in any real Nintendo era. So I thought this was an interesting insight into the man, the myth, the dad, Pokey Dad, Satoshi Tajiri.
Is he proudest of Timbo the Badass Elephant?
Find out next time. Dad Month 2. Or Elephant Month.
We did get into the elephant game.
How many elephant games can we find?
Next Pokuary. Tembo the Badass Elephant map.
It's so weird that it's strange that he's so well known for basically one game. And I guess that's all you have to be when you're that big. Or when it gets that big. But most developers try to make something else. And usually never live up to much else. But he's just really focused on that.
Yeah, there's some weird ones in between every so often, like Tembo or
Little Town Hero, right? That one.
I don't see his name on the list for games on the wiki for that, but I do see between the Pokemon's Drill Dozer in 2005, Harmo Knight
The game was good.
in 2012, Tembo in 2015, Giga Wrecker in 2017, and that was pretty much it in the in-betweens. I think Pulseman has kind of eluded me for a long time. I'm interested in that. And there's also Yoshi, the self-titled game.
Is it the green guy?
Gringa, yeah.
It's always, I mean, granted, like I think honestly, like I was trying to, I didn't think of what I was going to say before I said it. Sorry, guys. Is the fact that like Pokemon was kind of an anomaly, right? It was a new franchise that was being pioneered on a console that was like old, was it like 10 years old at that point or something? Like it.
Well,
Game Boy had
Pokemon
been out for a while.
True, yeah. Pokemon came out in 96.
When did the Game Boy come out? 80.
9 maybe?
So it was still old hardware.
Yeah, 89.
Wow.
Yeah. Like I don't know, like you don't see that a lot, especially to like that success.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Well, the Game Boy was kind of a magnificent console. Like we learned that with the Argonaut thing, you know? It's like there was a lot of untapped potential there. And like really Pokemon is huge, you know, to think about like on that system. You know, he created a whole world out of his imagination, like that really translated well to the console. You know, so it's something that even if you play that original version, still is like very extensive. You know, you have Pokédex entries for everything. Oh, I didn't even get into the link cable. He was really about that, like this idea of they compare it to sumo wrestling. Because it's like a one-on-one thing. He's like the internet wasn't out at that time, so but just the idea of like transferring, you know, like trading, all of that fascinated him.
Well, I was reading about him in a book, and they talked about a lot of the developers would go into these games into like creating a new game, and they would go in with a verb. It's kind of interesting, and his verb was trade. Like he's like, I want to design a game around the concept of trading, which is where you get like the two different versions of it. So you have to trade to get all of them. And the link cable was just the idea of seeing like a bug go on a cable, like crawl across into a different, like from one thing to the other. So that's kind of cool. There is trading in the game too, but I feel like it definitely spawned like a whole other part that isn't just trading. But still, it's interesting that that's where he like really started on the Pokemon thing. So it was really built from the ground up to steal your money.
My verb is capitulate. Just so you know.
It's a good one.
Ooh, that'd be a good game.
Capitulator.
Game of capitulation.
Capitulate. Capitulated.
That's like to
Stamp.
concede. To
Stamp up.
like to like yeah, like to concede something or to.
I used to think it was like from recap, like if you're recapping, you're capitulating your points, but that was wrong. I think it was to submit.
Yeah, like to like be like, okay, I'll let you have this one or have.
Yeah.
That'd be an interesting game to make,
I'll
Alex.
let you have my Pikachu.
Just let you have it.
You just have
It's
it.
the game of giving things away.
Yeah. A game of benevolence and charity.
Can you run your charity?
All right, Teddy. What's the guy's name again?
Satoshi Tajiri.
Satoshi. Okay, I'm gonna say Satoshi. So okay, Teddy, you're at your local Jimmy John's.
What's a Jimmy John?
It's like a Subway. It's like a
Nice.
better Subway.
Can we
You're
make
at
a
your local
Quiznos?
Okay, I'll make it Quiznos, but I like Jimmy John's better.
Okay.
You're at your wait. Do they have pickles at Quiznos?
Yeah.
Oh, Quiznos
You're
is
at-
phenomenal.
Quiznos is okay. Jimmy John's is better. So you're at your local Quiznos, and you're in line to get your favorite sandwich and a fresh pickle. And in line in front of you is
Standalone
Mr.
pickle?
Yeah.
Okay. Fried.
You ever had like a pickle with the sandwich?
Like a spear.
I get it with a
Yeah.
burger, like pickle and burger. You know, like the
Yeah, they do pickle
Yeah.
on deli sandwich. So,
on the sandwich. Yes, I understand that. Like chips, pickle chips.
but like on the side too.
Oh,
Yeah, it's a thing.
Anyway, so what's his name? Satoshi
Satoshi Tajiri.
Yoshi. He's in line in front of you ordering a Quiznos sub. My question for you is: he turns around and says in Japanese, "Young man, can you help me order a Quiznos sandwich? Which Quiznos sandwich are you ordering?"
Jesus.
No, I was kidding. and then afterwards, you can ask him one question.
Okay, good, because I don't remember the menu. It's been like 20 years since I've even seen a Quiznos. And then I can ask him whatever, like, hey, you're that Satoshi guy from the Pokemon series. This is in 1999 when I'm my age at the time.
Yes, you're time traveling.
And okay, he'd have to introduce himself, be like, oh yeah,
Wait,
I
wait.
made the Pokemon.
You time traveled back in time to go to Quiznos.
You time travel back to an arbitrary time in 1999
Yeah.
to talk to him.
No, not to. Teddy just stops. Teddy's on a different mission, but he stops into Quiznos.
Wait, he has a different mission to go to 1999, but
Yeah,
he
but he's
happens.
hungry. He's hungry, so he went to Quiznos.
Wait, my 30 whatever year old self goes to 99, or I'm my age at the
Yeah.
time?
Your 30-year-old self is in 99 right now, eating at Quiznos. You bump into him. What do you ask
Understood.
him?
So understand that he hasn't released anything past 99.
Yes. I
Okay.
understand that. But I'm also understanding that I know that I've gone back in time on a mission.
That's the weird part.
Yeah, which
That's
I'm
a
just
weird-
which I'm
So
neglecting.
you know what? Also, you know the legacy.
Do I know the mission?
That's not important.
What if the
That's
mission
not important.
What's important right now is talking to him at Quiznos.
What if I run into my whatever year old self in the same line?
At Quiz.
Yes.
How often did you go to Quiznos?
I don't know, once a year.
I think you got a pretty good chance.
Did Quiznos exist in 1999? I need to know
Question.
this.
Hold on.
Come on, Alex. Flesh out the story. Why is he traveling back in time in 1999?
Okay, in 1981, we're
gonna,
good.
You're not gonna like it.
You can tell me after. I'll give you my answer first. So I've gone on this mission to talk to Satoshi, and I can only ask him one question. I gotta make this a good one. What do you want Pokemon to look like 10 years? Nah, we'll do but I think 5 years from now is fine. In 10 years. What do you want Pokemon to look like in 10 years as a video game franchise?
Okay. What do you think his answer would be?
Probably say, more monsters, but I want to keep the elements of collection and communication, interesting and fun for the players. And I want them to fall in love with the worlds and the monsters that I create.
Okay. That's a good answer. And then afterwards, you complete your mission of getting Sega to include a DVD drive on the Dreamcast.
Nice.
Whoa.
Yeah.
And the
That
gaming
was his mission.
landscape is forever changed as we know it. Sony
PS2
is
doesn't
only
take over.
making TVs.
It still does very well, but it doesn't take over.
Mission accomplished.
Oh, Teddy.
Has no effect on the
Yep.
Pokemon series whatsoever.
Yeah. Quiznos, I think, goes out of business.
But he had a great sub.
After this.
He'll forever remember this conversation at Quiznos.
Hey y'all, don't forget to subscribe to them button mappers.